Hey, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode and another season of Honest Conversations with Mo, the Mo Love podcast. It is indeed season 4. Appreciate, you all, tapping in up until this point, um, through all the seasons thus far. But, I want to start off this new season a little different and, get right into it in the sense of for this opening topic, I want to talk about, how you go about, watching yourself, without shame, and I mean that in the sense of watching yourself without shame, kind of that. How do we go about, kind of cultivating that self awareness and criticism, and removing, that self criticism? I think, we kind of talked about, in previous seasons past. Replacing that, with compassion and kind of being honest with ourselves and getting rid of the the shame, we build within ourselves, that we often tend to sit with within ourselves. And I want to start off, as I said, a little different and kind of talk about how, I've been watching, myself, without shame of late, just, in a few different areas, starting off with, of course, personally, in terms of, how I'll start off with, just in terms of, just how to go about, kind of reframing that narrative, of how I've been, kind of watching myself is just I've seen I've seen myself, kind of grow, many areas, whether it's in, my focus and drive, when it comes to, you know, my personal pushing myself past, certain limitations, whether that's physically, kind of that strive and focus in the gym to knowing where I see myself and knowing how, I can get a bit bored, a bit complacent. So how to kind of remedy that, and get back to finding my joy. I know I've spoken on that before, and finding the things, finding my joy and finding the things that light me up is, certainly uh, tough for me. Only in the sense that sometimes I allow certain things to kind of, dictate dictate my emotions, and things of that nature. I know I've talked in the past of how I went about, getting caught up in seeking, that external validation, getting caught up in allowing others' opinions of myself to, dictate how, I might necessarily move and realizing that I wasn't whole with myself. And oftentimes I can admit there are moments that I, moved from fear or moved from doubt, and I had to get past that. I had to, navigate through that. Uh, and then even when thinking of just other subjects, as I said, professionally, as I said, I've seen how I've grown, as a leader, my willingness to not take on everything myself, that, you know, became a bit draining, for me. And then also the willingness to ask for help. I think that was something that I know in the past for sure that I struggled with. And that was something that was definitely a challenge, and I had to maneuver through that of, hey, how do I go back, and no, no, all right, this isn't something, I just have to solve by myself. I can go about, asking for help. So I think delegating was something that I definitely, I've seen myself in an area of, growing because I am very prideful, as I mentioned before, very much a perfectionist, and how I allowed not only that, just professionally, but personally, in the sense of my willingness to ask for help often led to moments of self doubt and self sabotage, and we'll get into those areas in just a little bit, in a little bit here, just in terms of all right, knowing when to ask for help, knowing how to not put everything on myself and not feel like I have to shoulder everything, have to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders, and kind of getting past that has definitely been something of a practice for me, for sure. And then also just finding a way to you know embrace embrace so many different things that in the past I would have been so afraid of, that I know it has shaped me into who I am now, who I am today. Where in the past that I would sit with these emotions or these thoughts and not know how to really feel it, really be be one of be one with myself, and also in the sense of getting caught up in, as I said, going back to that external validation, but getting caught up in and feeling like I got to prove something, or prove things to myself, and getting into that performative mindset. And then I want to get into as I said, I was gonna get back to that self sabotage and uh that sense of not being kind of in tune with myself. I feel like this past week has been such a great example. Like I said, I've really been dating like that lately. It was a young lady, uh that I was like, all right, we were gonna supposed to go out, things like that. We connected, boom boom. Then as the week progressed, noticed how the obviously the communication shifted, but in the sense of how I allowed those kind of those minor kind of triggers of my past to kind of dictate things like that. But just in the sense of all right, where and it's funny enough, I think about it too. It's like you ever think about how like when how to go back to the external validation, how when like you're not you got somebody coming over and you're like, all right, let me get my space together. But then, throughout the week, you're like, and you realize, boom, I did this in such a timely fashion. And you were like, dang, but, maybe it was like a week or two and you've been, letting, dishes pile up and things like that. You're able to do that in maybe 10, 20 minutes. But I think sometimes we let the impact of what could be or what we feel like we kind of, wanted in the moment, or how we allow others to perceive ourselves to impact how we're being genuine with ourselves on a day to day. And go back to, kind of that, cleaning up, for example. It's like, it's crazy that, the impression we want to make on someone that, you know, we care about versus we are, consistent in that sense with, with ourselves. But anyways, to go back to kind of that romantic sense, in just a week overall, and just how I could see, not only myself, kind of being performative, and things like that, or when also in the sense of that, as the the date, the date never happened, things like that. But I, internalized that, not just as, bit or a form of rejection, but I just, sat with it, and then in a way I, tended to move towards the route of, self-sabotaging and, kind of, beating myself up. I, go back about, kind of how I watch myself, have this propensity to, be my worst critic and, my worst enemy. I'm, obviously the hardest on myself. And I think we all tend to be, but I think about, the manner in which, I, speak to myself and, talk to myself. And I I get into those mode of, doubt and, kind of questioning my abilities and my capabilities. I feel like, okay, how do I navigate past that? How do I, like I said earlier, how can I not only reframe the narrative, but how can I acknowledge and accept that and repair the situations, repair that when it comes to, self sabotage, repair when that comes to, being a bit performative, repair it in the sense of how do I, how do I, feed myself with more self compassion and, uh, you know, uh, kinder words and reframe my outlook, on things overall. Because as I said, I, fueled by, this sense of greatness, and I know my ultimate capabilities and, how great I can be and how ultimately great I will be, in the end of, in all areas of life of, where I envision myself. But sometimes I get caught up in forgetting that, those day to day, those mundane days of things not going perfectly or things not, going my way or feeling like I think I'm also mentioned it too, I can be, be controlling and how, kind of want to shape things and kind of dictate things. But even in that sense of, that controlling nature of, okay, how can I move past this? How can I, uh shift my focus beyond that to, all right, still see, you know, this focus on this top objective here, but still knowing that these other things might not only still occur, but that I still can move in the belief that I know I'm going to get to here. And I think when I keep that focus and that, that drive and the attainability as as I'm watching myself and knowing how great I am and how great, I can be is I think it's just it goes back to kind of early, breaking that shame cycle of, no longer feeding, into the loop of, negativity, no longer hiding, not only our imperfections and our flaws, but, being honest and transparent with ourselves of knowing, hey, I'm only I'm only cleaning up my space because I feel like somebody coming over. No, go about just how do I go about taking care of my space to take care of it, for me, and I think being honest in that sense, and then also as I said, recognizing those imperfections, seeing that help and that support system that you know that we all have around us, and now knowing that it can not only take us a bit further, but it can help us, get better. And I think that was some of the things of how, I go about, watching myself without shame. And I think, I want you guys just to think about and have those, tough, honest conversations with yourself of how we allow certain things to, dictate us and, impact, the manner in which we move. But how do we go back to just as we're, navigating in this world and, how do we just take that step back, look at ourselves and not in this, sense of guilt or, disgust with ourselves, or, that shame and not feeling like, we're not where we feel like we need to be, or we're not who we thought we were gonna be, at this point, et cetera, XYZ in our lives. But just knowing, hey, what do I still need to work on? What do I still need to, you know, be honest with myself about? What do I still need to get better on? And how do we go about, kind of attaining those things? And then next, I want to talk about, kind of how do we go about, kind of building that inner throne of, self trust and, power, within ourselves. And I think building that inner throne it just begins with knowing that we are, we are going to, we're going to change, and we're going to, we're going to have, things in life that, impact us and hit us in, so many different directions. But it's about, being in tune with ourselves, kind of listening to our intuition, kind of trusting ourselves just overall, and knowing that how we how we allow our mindsets and, the things we think about, and the things, we often tend to, explore. As I said, I'm heartbroken. It's funny. I try not to harp on the past, but, talking about, past episodes, but just in the sense of where I talked about, my propensity, to be fueled by curiosity. How do I go about moving, with that? How do I go about, feeding into that? How do I go into, as I said before, I have a struggle with, you know, because I can get caught up in, boredom, or not feeling like, all right, is this, really bringing me joys? Is this really sparking me? Um, or, that movie, in terms of, that performative nature we get caught up in, that we forget the things that light us up and bring us joy. But there's a sense of, you know, finding that time to self-evaluate, to self-reflect, and really, sit with ourselves and know what are we, seeking from ourselves? What are we wanting from ourselves at the end of the day? Because, you can have these lofty goals and these lofty objectives, but if you're not truly in tune with yourself and trust yourself, and trust the overall, power and capabilities that you have, that that are, your strongest skill sets, that it becomes pointless, becomes baseless, because you'll allow so many other things outside of not only your parameters, but to dictate how you move, that you forget essentially, what is it that, you're trying to achieve. And I think when we are able to, keep those small promises to ourselves, whether it's, hey, I'm gonna funny enough today, like I, told my trainer, on Thursday, I was like, or on Tuesday, that, he had mentioned, he was gonna be there Thursday, and he's like, and then I was like, I'll be 2 days off Saturday, of course that was today. And I kept not only that promise to him, but that promise to myself of like, all right, we said we would commit to, 2 days, today at the gym for just today, gave it a shot, and, obviously drained and tired, but just to still be able to, keep that promise to myself, and be not only, you know, trusting myself and be honest with myself, but holding myself, accountable. And as try to do my best to being a man of my word, and being, truly honest with myself in that sense. And then go about, kind of name your notes. What are those, non-negotiables, and sticking to it, for myself, where, I shifted away from so many things that maybe, I delved into or fed into in the past that no longer, I'm able to be like, nah, nah, I'm not, involved with that anymore, don't want to, get myself into anymore and just, naming those no's and holding myself. I then go back to those small promises, not only holding myself accountable, but expressing them to others and be like, hey, now it's not me no more and things of that nature. And then also know just, your character and your personality, me. I love to, I love to have fun. I love to laugh. I love to connect with others. And, I definitely, tend to, they will, troll or maybe, uh, do a bit too much in that sense of where I troll too far to an extent, to where I'm not only not being, not troll, just in the sense of, just having fun and, being lighthearted. But I think sometimes, bit where for myself, like trolling can go too far is, I'm not really like sitting there listening, to my feelings, listening and sitting there to, how I feel. So I think even just understanding that, that trust and that power of, hey, yeah, you're not doing that because, you just, want to laugh and things like that. You're doing that to, avoid this or avoid, this feeling. So I think even that sense of that, that honesty, with ourselves and then continue to, find ways to stay out of our comfort zone, you know, and then, further, embrace responsibility, embrace vulnerability overall, and just be real with you and that ultimate power that you have within yourself that fuels you and drives you because we all have that power no matter how it shows up or how it looks within each and every one of us. It's about not only tapping in and just sitting with our higher selves. It's about being willing to be in solitude with ourselves too. I think oftentimes that we're chasing, chasing that, approval from others that we sometimes forget to tap into, that higher authority within ourselves, listening to our intuition and listening and uh coming to terms with the things we believe in and moving in accordance with that. Um But then now, next I'm gonna get into the WNBA CBA deal. What history, of course, was made. The WNBA, coming to terms, with their CBA deal. That is not only record breaking, and I'm glad that it happened. And also briefly talking to the Connecticut Sun landmark sale as well back to Houston, but just on the WNBA CBA deal, I know, discussed this, throughout months, giving you guys updates, but just so incredibly happy for, all the women in the W and, even uh what they did to not only further grow the game, for the future, but also how they, took care, those who came before them in the past, and just ensuring, certain elements, within the deal that, pays homage to that as well. But I mean, what 20% increase in in revenue share. They were able to obtain that. I mean, the max salary now, super max is 1.2 million. The overall, salary cap per team is 7 million. And then what the minimum is 600K. I mean, just record breaking numbers to not only understand and um, negotiate and fight for their worth and fight for you know what they know they believe in, at their overall true value, and knowing how when it comes to that 20% revenue share. knowing where this game is going, within the W, you know, it's, evolution and its growth, and just knowing like, hey, that's only going to obviously lead to, further increase in the cap, further increase in, the supermax numbers. Yeah, just, kudos to, those, in the in the WNBA PA that, made this deal come to fruition, you know, wow, just much love and excited to see, this upcoming W season. I think we got the draft uh in 2 weeks, I want to say. Yeah, the draft's in 2 weeks, the W draft. So should be a fun season, the W this upcoming season. Free agency is about to be chaotic because I think only two players weren't under contract, so everybody's free game. Obviously with this new CBA, things are about to turn up. Teams are gonna have money to play with and spend. Um, I think we already know who's getting the supermax for sure, and she better be the first one. It better be Asia Wilson. 5 years, 7 million. I think that comes out to 1.2. Yeah, definitely. She deserves that, and they better give her that bag out there in Vegas for sure. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting off season and summer heading into the season for the W. It's just about to be incredible. But yeah, shout out to those that were part of the negotiation process, and just ensuring that all the players in W are able to uh be paid their just due. And like I said, this is only the beginning. That 20% revenue share, probably the most monumental part for sure, and just knowing how that's going to lead to future growth of the game. But yeah, excited for the W, and it's going to be fun. Going to quickly touch on the record-breaking news that came out the other day. The Connecticut Sun are gonna be back in Houston because they got sold. The Sun got sold to Houston Rockets owner. I want to say correctly. I forget his name, but Frittata, I think. I forget his name. But anyways, Connecticut Sun are going back to Houston for, I want to say, 300 mil. Although it's a little upsetting knowing that I think how the W and the league from kind of the potential move to Boston of the Sun a little while ago. I would say it was just like mid last year, um, for a record 500 million. That probably would have been incredible for not only growing the game in the Northeast, but it's great to see, Houston having a team once again. Obviously, the dynasty that was the Comets early on in the inaugural years of the W. And it'll be interesting, as the game, continues to grow. We have, an expansion draft as well coming up soon. That's going to shift things. I forget it's the Tempo. Yeah, the Tempo are coming into the league this year. So yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be exciting W season. But yeah, the Connecticut Sun deal, I'm still like, I mean, obviously it's dope to see Houston, another kind of mid major market, get their franchise back. But I think it's just I think if you're a Connecticut Sun fan, a fan of basketball in the Northeast, that you're like, dang, they lost their team, and probably would have been able to keep their team, if the deal would have went through last year. But definitely understand the frustration, but definitely great sight for the great for the W in terms of how owners are showing their investment. I think just to be interesting just how in terms of how the league continues to choose, gets involved. Uh, I think it's great for the city of Houston. Sucks for Connecticut Suns fans. They still got UConn Huskies, the Lady Huskies, who are balling in March Madness, probably on their way to repeat, for sure. Man, it's been a wild March Madness season. I'll be honest, I haven't really been tapped in too much in terms of uh, the madness in March in college basketball this year for sure. But I know the games have been incredible. I was watching yesterday, not only Hannah Hidalgo's performance for Notre Dame, but just how obviously the fight that UNC put against the Huskies in the first half. But Sarah Strong and the Lady Huskies, you know, second half ran with it. But yeah, Hannah Hidalgo's near quadruple double. Lauren Betts balling out for UCLA. As I said, I haven't been fully tapped in, but catching games here and there. And then on the mid side, uh, much as I hate to say, excuse me, as much as I hate to say, Duke Smith looking good, but also we see uh, surprising teams, in Illinois. Who else? Men's UConn basketball been solid. See, they're in the Elite Eight. Uh, Arizona Wildcats, they've been looking good. Who else was more of a not only Illinois, somebody else? Man, blanking on 'em. Dang, I'm definitely blanking on this team. I was just looking at it earlier, but ah, I hate to say it, though. As a Carolina Tar Heels fan, when it comes to the men basketball side, and obviously Heels, lost early, in the tournament. Ah, this Duke team is looking good, and hopefully, their run gets cut short soon enough, but we'll see. They are looking, like the most formidable, in the Elite Eight for sure. And then I want to get into how my Los Angeles Lakers have been rolling, have been hooping, they've been balling out. Uh, we, coming into, second half, following All-Star break, kind of closing out this season, we had that little bump in the road, a lot of, oh, what's going on, in the locker room here, this and that. But as we got healthy, we got Luka, LeBron, and they are fully on the court. The team's just been balling out, sitting, you know, not fully comfortably, but a bit, feeling good, as the third seed, obviously owning the tiebreaker over all the three teams below us in the Nuggets, the Rockets, and the Timberwolves for that three seed. So having, having that tiebreaker over all three of those teams after, having beat all three of those teams, recent games during this nice stretch. Obviously, we recently saw our 9-game win streak come to an end, but back again, back to our winning ways. And in a game that we probably definitely should have won against the Pistons, but tough game where I keep forgetting his first name, but Jenkins balling out, man. For the Pistons, obviously they lost, Cade, but he was balling out that game. And yeah, hit that big shot. We just, couldn't get over the hump in that game. But besides the point, we've been looking great as a team, and the man has been fueling it. Luka Don, 12 straight 30-point games. He had another 40-point game last night. He hit 63 for whatever games back against the Heat. Man has been making his case for MVP. He's been averaging about during this stretch. I want to say it's like 36, maybe even more than that, 36, 8 and 8, like two to three steals per game. I mean, Luka has been balling. Obviously, the narrative is a lot of those games, and being close games, as we are one of the best, clutch teams in the league. But I think Luka is very much, not only my natural bias as a Laker fan, but just seeing, this season, that Luka is very much, deserving of MVP. Obviously, we know Shea's been having, an incredible season where, consistent numbers, able to sit out fourth quarter and, Obviously, Thunder able to take care of business, and Shea able to sit comfortably. Usually around 30. Obviously, he has an incredible 20-point game scoring streak that's going on right now. But just in terms of what Luka's doing for Lakers, I mean, it's just been incredible to see. And I think if we continue to hold on to that 3 seed, he is very much deserving of MVP and is very much now the best player in the league this season. There's been talks of Wemby obviously recently on his comments about winning the MVP. Obviously sad to see Cade, who's was I think he played 61 games thus far up until his injury. The news of his injury came out. Was on his way to an All NBA season, and knowing the 65-game minimum and just how that impacts things. Joker's been having an incredible season, but y'all know who my MVP pick is. It's Luka Doncic. But yeah, I mean, it's gonna be interesting. As the season closes out, I'm feeling good. I think obviously I'll get back to you guys on it, but just in terms of how seeding goes, you know, it'll be interesting for us, for the Lakers. As we kind of close out the season, I feel, we'll close out in that 3 seed. But just in terms of how things shake out, underneath us, that that could impact, my my delusional grandeur for Lakers, winning the championship. But feeling good about the team. Like I said, we've been playing well, been playing not only great, team ball offensively, but kind of been a bit, definitely a bit more consistent on the defensive end. And showing growth since Purse. Obviously, team's been a little bit, nicked by injuries. Lucas, Tex, weighing over his head, no suspensions. I want to say, yeah, he got the tech last night, so more than likely out against the Wizards. Yeah, and I wanted to see 90-point Luka game and Vandy get 83 against the Wizards. Luka could definitely get 90, 100, but nah. But what is it? Nah, definitely Luka deserves MVP. Lakers looking good. I'm excited heading into playoffs, and yeah, feeling good. I wanted to, I wanted to early. Feeling, championship buzz, championship. We are a championship contender for sure, though. Uh, Despite, the narratives out there about the team and, too many close games. I think we show, kind of that grit that we're able to close, in clutch moments. But, as the game gets closer, playoff like atmospheres, but feeling great about my Lakers. And then as always, just want to close out this episode. Top four. What have I been listening to? It's still been cold, guys. I'll be honest with y'all. Still been cold. It's been the fall off. Been tapping into different music here and there. I listen to the new, Young Blue kind of, mixtape ish, kind of, solid tracks there. What was I listening to recently that caught my eye? What was it? Let me see. Let me see what it was. But yeah, Cole's still been prevalent um on the track list and been it's been bumping gold, guys. Like honestly, this album, I don't know what it is, just still booming. But listen to the, new LANY, their kind of deluxe-ish kind of version of their soft album with soft 2. Then obviously Ty Dolla Sign's new Pimmy, she smoked that. um her uh her EP, I don't EP, kind of how you would call it, but yeah, she smoked that. But yeah, not really been tapped into too much new music. Still been on the cold wave. um what have I been watching? I've been watching a lot of, Marvel movies, friends at work, just good friends overall. Told me to, get on the Marvel wave. And been tapped in, and I'll delve into that in the future. But it's been a great watch so far. Uh, what else have I been watching? Just my usual shows. I think I started a new series there. Like, I mean, I did like Bait. That was a good show. But is there like a new show for sure that I was like, I mean, like I said, just been constantly watching my shows. FBI. What else have I been watching that I could think of? Happy's Place. Just those general shows and sitcoms. I watch. The Neighborhood. They're finishing up their final season. What else have I kind of watching? And things that's been pretty much outside of all the Marvels. Definitely been my focus. I'm watching the movies from you know so what is it? It's story order, not release date order, but just chronologically in the story. It's been fun. Like I said, we'll dive more deeper into that, but in future episodes, definitely been on my Marvel wave lately. What what do I what do I look what do I currently have going on? Getting things are picking up, getting busy, in terms of professionally, with work. And then it's our busy season, so just continue to lock in and focus. And at the same time, just continue to take care of myself, and my mental and things of that nature, and continue to rely around my support system, the people that not only feed me but continue to make me even better. Yeah, just what I got going on, couple trips, things of that nature. What am I looking forward to? Looking forward to further, not only further, watching myself without shame, but also further, you know, building, that throne for myself. You know, to piggyback, off the topics earlier, but also just looking forward to getting better. 1% every day. Continue to get out of my comfort zone, push myself, beyond my what I define as so I wasn't capable of. And then moving past, kind of perfectionism and control just overall, day by day. And then just looking forward to, like I said, these trips I have coming up, getting through, just, what's next and, what's ahead. Knowing, big things are on the horizon, but just still taking it, one day at a time because, that no knowing, obviously have that, the self-belief in myself and, as I said, that overall greatness for myself, but still, taking it only, one day at a time. But as always, I always appreciate y'all, for listening to my rambles, and, tapping back in, for another season. It's gonna be a fun season this season, but I appreciate y'all as always. And, until next time, peace.